Sure you're ready for this?
I'll do my best.
Your best? Losers always whine about their best. Winners go home and fuck the prom queen.
Carla was the prom queen.
Really?
Yeah.
We interrupt this program to bring you
Nick Whoa, Cage!
All right, everybody. My name is Kevin.
And I'm John.
And I'm Adam.
And I'm Julie.
And we are the Real Movie Guys. And welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, the series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies. And guess what, guys? It's March, so we're bringing you something special. It's a real cage match. The Real Cage Match series is a special series by The Real Movie Guys where we take a look at one of our favorite actors, Nicolas Cage, and is going head-to-head with 12 of his greatest flicks. Only one's going to survive. Let's find out which one. Today, this episode, we're going to be taking a look at The Rock. A mild-mannered chemist and ex-con must lead the counterstrike when a rogue group of military men led by a renegade general threaten a nerve gas attack from Alcatraz against San Francisco. All right, guys. I don't know about you. I'm really excited for this series. I've been waiting God knows how many years to talk about Nicolas Cage. He gives us some of the best, worst, and maybe I can't describe performances in between. This is amazing. Okay, I have to tell you, and I'm so happy we got to start with this movie because I have to tell you, The Rock is one of my favorite action movies of all time. It's the birth of so many great things I can't wait to talk about. But what I want to do before that is let's go around and just sample a little bit. John, tell me about The Rock. Have you seen it before? Is this your first time? What's going on?
No, this is my first time ever seeing this movie, even really hearing about it, to be honest.
Really? That's kind of shocking.
Yeah, like,
right, go ahead.
it just was one of those movies that when you mentioned and then after watching, I grew a great appreciation for it, but it wasn't like one that I've seen ever.
That's surprising. And what'd you think? Mostly positive, kind of negative? What'd you think?
No,
just general.
mostly good.
Mostly good? Okay. All right. Adam, what's going on? Tell me about The Rock. And not Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
No. Well, I can't help but not think about him when I say The Rock.
Right.
But this was my first time seeing this movie as well.
Okay. And what'd you think? So overall,
I liked it. I thought it was fun. It's a fun action, 90s action movie.
Yeah, I think that kind of summarizes pretty much what it is. I mean,
yeah.
there's a little more to it, I think, but I agree with you. Julie, How about you? What'd you think?
I had never seen The Rock before. I had heard about it
from me,
in passing, from you, from my dad. I was pleasantly surprised. I'm not the biggest action movie fan, so I enjoyed myself.
So why is The Rock so goddamn special? Well, let me tell you this. It's one of Michael Bay's first outings as a director, and it really shows. If you know anything about Michael Bay, you all the cliches are here. I think we could do a drinking game. You're going to be drunk within the first 2 minutes of this movie between American flags waving in the air with the military, sunsets, sun flares blowing in your face, the mild manner, squeaky kind of guys in a weird situation, hurrah, hurrah. It's all that. It's everything Michael Bay. Fast editing. Crazy action scenes, things exploding that shouldn't be exploding. It has it all. But you know what? I would say this is probably the most tame Michael Bay movie out of some of his more later outings we've seen with Transformers, even Pain and Gain to some extent, stuff like that. But this is where I think he did the best because the action in this movie is really solid. Even by today's standards, it's all practical. There's really if there is any CGI, it's very rarely noticeable. Adam, did you have any particular scenes that you really liked? Because again, I think the action's fantastic in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like some of the action scenes are kind of just shoehorned in there just because, it is a Michael Bay film. I liked, I think my favorite was the shootout in the showers.
Mm-hmm.
That was it was a very tense situation, I think.
It was too, and I feel like it it shouldn't have been, but it was for whatever reason.
I know, right?
Like
I think
they
it was
had
all
all
shouting.
right, and it was like so like military, like, sir, we have to go against orders, sir. No, sir, we
Yeah.
can't do that. And it's again Michael Bay just like yelling dialogue to make it sound important. It really it works though in the context of what he was doing.
Right.
I think that was a tense scene, and it actually does have like maybe more emotion than some of his latter work, where it's just explosions for the sake of it. But that was actually like, all right, they're kind of going against missions, and that's what's kind of interesting about this movie. It's like the bad guys in this movie aren't necessarily bad guys to some extent, which again, that's maybe a lot deeper than most Michael Bay movies are to some extent, where it's usually like clearly cut. These are the bad guys. These are the good guys. The bad guys are just the military, led by Ed Harris, who's again fantastic in this movie, who we'll see a couple times with Nicolas Cage. He shows up, they come across each other a couple times. But Ed Harris is leading this whole like rebellion, capturing Alcatraz, because they're going to fire off missiles because they want to get compensation for all the military heroes that were ignored by the United States. And he kind of get his cause, right, John? Wouldn't you say it's kind of like a good? I mean, he's going about it the wrong way, clearly, but I think it's a good thing that he's trying to do here.
No, yeah, I thought like that kind of backstory to it was actually more interesting than a lot of films seem to go with. Like a lot of films, they're just like out of this world, but this is kind of like you can kind of see it in a way, and I feel like the action just added to the plot. The other thing was too, like the way that they were able to get into the jail, I thought was kind of like an interesting, kind of weird way to do it. Because I was like, how are they gonna like manage this without being seen? And then they kind of made it like, so I thought that was kind of an interesting part.
Yeah, that's something too. And it's funny because like Sean Connery feels so randomly thrown into this movie at some point. I think we can kind of all agree there. It's just like, oh, we have this British Secret Service officer we've kept hidden, locked in like a dungeon somewhere. So we're gonna bring him out now because he's the only person who ever escaped Alcatraz. Completely random, but in some sense it works because oddly enough, Sean Connery and Nick Cage have a crazy good chemistry together, which I never thought I could ever say in my entire life. Julie, what did you think of that pairing? Because you're not really familiar with Sean Connery, I don't think. To say you haven't seen him in many things, at least.
No, but I think he stole the show. While you said he might be random, I think it would have been a completely different movie without him. He had so many great one-liners and quips, and his back and forth with not only Cage, but like every other character in the movie. His line delivery was just impeccable. Really a lot of memorable moments.
Yeah, the seasoned actor. I mean, Sean Connery clearly is. Like, he knows exactly how to make the most insane moments work perfectly. And I think what we really should talk about, this is a Nick Cage series, so I guess we do have to talk about the star himself, Nicolas Cage. Adam, what did you think of Nicolas Cage in this movie? Was he... Because this is early in his career, too. This is probably one of his first action outings, I'd have to say. What did you think? Was he really like the Nick Cage we know now, or was he just kind of like, getting by at this point? Because he's not really a conventional action star, which is kind of odd, too.
I think it was also the role that he plays in this movie because, he's not exactly, he's more of, I guess, an innocent, if you will, or,
right.
Not as intense of a character usually.
Yeah.
So I think maybe he was just getting by, at least for now. But I think this definitely solidifies more of like what we know about Nicolas Cage today.
Yeah, and it's just strange because he's not a Julie, even you kept saying a couple times when we were watching, like, how is Nick Cage an action star? Like, it makes absolutely no sense. In this movie, he's really just the scientist that kind of gets caught up in the whole journey along with Sean Connery. But again, his like ineptability of being like a soldier and a military guy makes Sean Connery look that much more badass, I think, throughout the movie.
Yeah, but then he also handles himself a lot better than he should, I guess, considering his background. I don't know. His character, I felt like, was kind of mixed all over the place where, I mean, I guess depending on the setting, like in the beginning when they have, that bomb that gets sent to them in the lab and he's defusing it, he kind of, keeps his cool and he's kind of making little jokes as he's doing it. But then when he gets thrown into a more action intense area, his confidence falters. But Nick Cage, yeah, he's not your typical action guy, and he's not even conventionally attractive, and yet in all of these movies, he gets these beautiful women. It's mind-blowing to me. That's going to be my nitpick with every single Nick Cage movie going forward.
He's just got a swag about him, right, John? I mean, I think he carries it, though. I mean, he has some zany moments, for sure. I mean, he has like a long rant about the Beatles at one point in the movie, where about buying vinyl. that would only be in a Nick Cage movie. I can't see that being, it has nothing to do with the plot. And I feel like Michael Bay wouldn't even have wanted that in the movie, to be honest. But I could see Nick Cage being like, it'll make my character better. It'll make me look good, you know? What'd you think of that, John? Because he has a lot of crazy moments like that.
Yeah, I think it's just some of the things that he can throw in for his own touch. But, like, I didn't really look at his attractiveness, to be honest, like, or his attractive girl in this movie either.
You sure, Johnny?
I'm sure.
You
Like,
have a Nick Cage poster hung up in your room?
Never.
Wouldn't
be one of those guys I choose.
He wouldn't be the guy for John. Well, I'll let you know Nick Cage isn't that guy. But again, I think this movie, it cements its place in history. And it's a shame. I feel like in some ways it has been kind of like forgotten to time just a little bit. And, you know, again, I can't really understand why. I think it's a really fun romp, the whole thing. It's hard to even critique to some extent because it really just is like kind of Adam said in the beginning. This is just cheese 90s action. It really is just, again, from the whole plot, everything that's going on, the one-liner quips. We have to admit the best one-liner comes from Sean Connery. I hate to say, it's like if you're not the best, you have to fuck the prom queen or whatever like that. And then Nick Cage is like, Carla was the prom queen. That's the best quote in the movie, and that's like legendary for this movie. Anytime I hear that, and whenever I hear The Rock, I have to say it like Sean Connery. Even when I think of Dwayne The Rock Johnson, I have to say it like Sean Connery. At least that's how I associate it so much, because Sean Connery, you know, he's an amazing actor, and this kind of proves that he was able to do different roles, kind of like Nick Cage is. And this is, again, very, very early Nick Cage as far as action. We're going to talk about some of his earlier works where they're more like serious, like dramas and stuff like that. But it's just interesting. Like, this is the beginning of that transition to action for him. I think that really works well. But again, before we go to our final scores, there's one special thing I want to add for this movie and this whole series in general. Nick Cage is insane. I think we brought it up quite a few times now. So for each movie, I think we need to bring out the real Cagiest moment. So prior to our discussion as a group, we've come together to find out what was the real Cagiest moment. And Adam, what do you think of what would you say was the real Cagiest moment for this movie?
So the best Cagiest moment from this movie, I think, is the quote where Nicolas Cage talks about himself being a biochemist and how he's driving a Volvo this whole time, and, you know, a beige one to be specific about it.
Listen, I'm just a biochemist. Most of the time I work in a glass jar and lead a very uneventful life. I drive a Volvo, beige one. But what I'm dealing with here is one of the most deadly substances the earth has ever known. So what do you say you cut me some friggin' slack?
I think that is that's definitely like plucked right out of Nicolas Cage's brain directly, it seems.
Right, and he has like the crazy eye moment too, which I think that's like one of the most iconic things about Nick Cage, where he's like, "Cut me some freaking slack." He's just
and
like
the flared nostrils.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, and this is like his trademark style. We're gonna see this, I think, in just about every movie. We're gonna have a scene like this where he just like he kind of loses it. And again, Julie, you talked about him being like, you know, that unattractive kind of just like average looking kind of guy.
He's not unattractive. He's just not conventionally attractive.
And maybe I think that's part of it. I think part of that craziness, like Adam said, that line kind of embodies it. He's just like a normal average guy. And then he's got that little bit of craze to him, a little bit of craziness to him. And I think that just makes him generally more interesting. And again, I think one last thing we should talk about too, Stanley Goodspeed. That's the name they went with, you know. John likes it. John's thumbing up over there.
I love Stanley Goodspeed.
I know
this movie paced at a very good speed.
It did, actually. We didn't talk about that. It did move pretty fast, right? You got to give Michael Bay some credit there. There were no dull moments really in this movie.
No, I didn't get bored during this movie.
No, especially like I said, with the action scenes. There's a lot of like cliches in those action scenes. I think the one like unnecessary cliche was like the older woman. She was like a grandma like pushing her cart across the street, and then there was like a tram car with like the one like guy who's been working on there like, oh look, there's stuff over here. And then like oh shit, they get hit and it's like shooting down the street and like catches on fire and it flips over and it's like, again, explosions. It's Michael Bay. What do you expect? That's what the 90s was. Kids, if you're watching this video, the 90s was explosions and just nonstop action. That's all it was. Again, I think this movie's really fun. Let's get to our final scores. I'm going to give The Rock a 9 out of 10.
Let's talk music. Do you like the Elton John song Rocket Man?
I don't like soft ass shit.
Oh, you. Oh. Well, I only bring it up because it's you. You're the Rocket Man. How do you like how that shit works?
I give this a really high score, and the reason I do is because I think it's kind of sets the tone for, even though it was later in the 90s, this came out in 1996. If you asked me what the 90s was as far as action, I would tell you watch The Rock. The Rock kind of embodies the whole spirit of the 90s and its action. It starts off Nick Cage on a crazy journey that I can't wait to talk about as far as action movies. Does it have its cliches? Absolutely, but I think they're fun. I actually enjoy the cliches that are in this movie. And even up until the very end with the reveal of Sean Connery stealing nation secrets and stuff like that, it's just crazy. This movie makes no sense half the time, but it's okay because I think it's a really fun time and I think you're going to enjoy it. That's kind of where I stand with it. John, where do you stand with this movie?
Oh, I give this movie a nice big 9.
My name's Stanley Goodspeed. I'm a chemical weapons specialist for the FBI. Glass or plastic? What? Glass or plastic? Glass or plastic? Shut the fuck up! Because if the winds change, after you launch those rockets, we're all gonna die! Shut up! And you're gonna end up in either a glass jar or a plastic bag! So what do you say you do the math? Hand over the gun, and let's go find some rocket!
I thought it was enjoyable. I had fun with it. Good action. Corny jokes. And good speed. I like it.
I can't agree with you, my friend. I really can't. Adam, how about you?
All right, I'm going to give The Rock an 8.5 out of 10.
Thank you for that. You could have handled it differently.
What do you say we cut the chit-chat? A-hole! You almost got me killed twice, and my jaw hurts like hell.
Good.
You hit it all. This is a very fun movie. It's very enjoyable, and I would absolutely watch it again. You know, this is definitely going to fall more in line with, you know, my 90s. And if I go on a 90s kick of action movies, this would probably be in there.
Yeah, I think it's like a movie marathon must for action
Absolutely.
movies. And again, I think more people really do need to experience it. It's a shame that, like you said, like out of all of us, no one's really heard of it. Of course, besides me. But again, it's one of those movies that you just have to experience, right? I guess that's really the best way to put it. You have to experience it. Julie, how about you? Where do you stand?
I'm going to give The Rock an 8 out of 10.
What's wrong with these people, huh, Mason? Don't you think there's a lot of anger floating around this island? Kind of a pubescent volatility? Don't you think? A lot of angst, a lot of 16, I'm angry at my father syndrome. I mean, grow up! We're stuck on an island with a bunch of violence for pleasure-seeking psychopathic Marines. Shame on them!
My own biases involved. I'm not a huge action movie person. The saving grace was Sean Connery and some morally gray areas between the heroes and the villains. And the cagey moments were fine, but he's not my favorite actor in the world to be doing a whole month dedicated to.
Julie's going to have a tough time, it sounds like, and it's only the
I
beginning.
think, and going forward, it's probably going to, be on a steadily decline.
We'll see. I'm very interested
We'll see.
to
I
see
might
what
be
you
surprised.
think. I'm very interested to see what you think. But again, guys, thank you all so much for joining us for this episode of The Real Review. Again, this is the Real Cage Match Month where we're going to be taking a look at 12 different Nicolas Cage movies. So after 2 movies, you're going to see a small little video where we're going to duke it out and see who moves along in our brackets. Make sure you follow us along, stay up to date with the channel because we're going to have a pretty zany, cagey month. But again, thank you all so much for watching this episode. My name's Kevin. That's John, Adam, Julie. We are the Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time. If you guys like what you've seen here today, consider giving this video a like and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay up to date with everything Real Movie Guys related, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget, all you audio listeners at home, we are available on many podcasting platforms. Just search The Real Movie Guys, you should pop right up. Thank you again all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time.